Hey everybody, welcome back to Rethink Real Estate. Today what we're going to be going through is increasing fees. A little bit of an observation that we have made internally here after a bit of reflection, getting through most of the year so far. So just want to share our experience. Hopefully it helps. Welcome to Rethink Real Estate. My name is Ben Brady, and this is a real estate podcast aimed to deliver sales strategies, marketing tips, and business insights from industry experts and myself to build a listing-focused business for the future. Let's get into it. Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Rethink Real Estate. This is a quick episode today because I don't know that I've got a great deal of context or content to give after this. It's just one of the realizations of what we're reflecting on, going through things at the moment. For some reason, I already think that I'm at the end of the year, and I know it's only October, but it still feels like that. And it's just with things being a tiny bit slower across the board of everything at the moment, it's given us some time to really work on some projects within the company, certainly the auction business anyway. So again, we've got Calista out there at the moment doing an MBA of AI to see how we integrate AI better into the business. We've got presentations, all this type of stuff that's going on at the moment. And one of the things that I've been reflecting on is just our numbers. And one of the things that I will say is that we made a decision at the beginning of this year, or it was actually a decision when I took over back the auction business from Jason. For those of you that know us a little bit more intimately, is that from a white label perspective, is that everything that was external to Harcourts, we're charging 1% as an auction fee. And that change was made because I obviously just value my time a lot more. And again, I think that it was more so the fact that I thought we were going to be doing less volume with me at the helm, which is actually not the case. We've actually doubled the volume of what we were ultimately doing. And again, that's not a pat on the back to me or a shout against those that were doing it before me. It's just it's probably just the way of the marketplace getting a little tighter and people wanting to understand the auction process a little bit more. Now, that being said, is that we changed our auction fee from half a point, 0.5%, if the property sells before auction on the day or within 60 days after, to 1%. And, it's always a fearful thing when you put a fee up versus you put it down. And we put our administration fee up as well. And it was funny to see nobody kick back. Now, that's not 100% true, and that's a generalization. I should quickly preface this is that nobody kicked back being the sellers on their properties, because it was one thing that was very consistent with our service is that when it was 0.5%, they would always be a little bit more skeptical about the auction process. It's something they don't know, and it's so cheap that it doesn't, okay, great, sounds good. What's the catch? That would constantly be the thing that we would be asked. What's the catch? But now we're charging 1%. We've put the administration fee up. It varies per region, but in some regions it's $3,000 to $5,000 administration fee up front. And they're in the regions where you've got a little bit more remote properties. I know we've got like some Texas properties, land that we've done. We need to, I want an administration fee that's pretty large up front to sort of see what their level of motivation is, because the reality of selling a vacant piece of land that hasn't sold and been on the marketplace for 12 years, it's quite slim. So we want to make sure that there's a barrier to entry for properties like that. And it works most of the time. However, that being said, is that charging 1% and charging an administration fee up front, it actually is a point where they're like, okay, makes sense. Okay, that's a decent amount of money on a $4 million property. That's $40,000. Again, it's pretty simple maths. 20 on a $2 million property, that's $20,000. It's a substantial amount of money. From a 1% perspective, considering that you're paying the listing side commission and also there may be a buyer side commission attached to that as well. And now again, is that it was just so interesting to see that there wasn't the questions around, well, what's the catch? Explain this to me more. I just don't know. Like there's less questioning and there is more certainty in, okay, all right, well, that's a decent amount of, okay, I can see that. I can see you guys getting paid that based on all the effort and the work that you put in. Because again, we explain this in the listing presentation or in the presentation of auction is that, your listing agent is still your listing agent. They are responsible for marketing the property, and they also are responsible for where it is, what it is, and why someone should buy it, okay? They're obviously responsible also for showing the property. You are still their client. Any buyer that comes unrepresented is theirs, or the data that is gathered from the property is theirs, okay? You are under their listing agreement. Our auction agreement is in addition to their listing agreement itself. But the auction team's involvement is that our responsibility is to follow up all parties that have been through the property and answer questions from buyers and agents about auction. Our job is also to provoke offers prior to auction day, okay? Help negotiate those offers prior to auction day to best leverage the auction date coming up. Also, it is our responsibility to strategize into auction day that do we have the right level of competition in order to create the best and most successful auction? Now, if we don't, now how do we handle that with a postponement, or how do we handle that going back traditional, or how do we handle that with it coming off the market? Leading into auction day, though, it is our responsibility to get verification of identity, verification of financial situation of any registered bidder, get them registered to bid, facilitate the live auction, facilitate the negotiation on live auction day, okay, facilitate also the signing of the contract and getting the money paid, earnest money into the escrow or into the trust account or wherever it needs to be, depending on where you are, all the way through that then strategy post-auction if we don't get to that result. So when you explain the volume of work that ultimately goes into it from an auction perspective, now that is a very short overview of what that is. When you were saying it was 0.5%, they're like, okay, that's really cheap. Okay, doesn't really mean anything. Half a point doesn't really mean anything. 1% is obviously a substantial amount of money. It's double the fee. And again, you're getting not a lot of pushback. So why am I bringing that up is that draw a parallel to your real estate business. If you're not asking for a good amount of money at the beginning of it, they're probably thinking that, oh, okay, well that's, they're probably going to question what's the catch, okay? Because when something is expensive, okay, or you get the sale of something before you understand the price tag and it's starting to sound really good, you're starting to think, oh, how much is this going to cost me? And when it's less than what you ultimately think it was going to cost you, you start to then question or become a little bit skeptical. Versus if it's way more than you expect, you're like, of course, it sounded too good to be true. Too good to be true is easier to come down from than what's the catch? That's something that I think that the real estate community should reflect on. Anyway, just wanted to share our experience with it. Hopefully it's made a bit of sense. Hopefully you stand firm on fees, maybe increase them a little bit, okay? And see what people's response is. The anxiety of asking is typically worse than the response that you actually get. Thanks, everyone. So about 75% of our audience hasn't liked, followed, or subscribed to our podcast. It would mean the world to us, and it would help this podcast more than you know to expand our reach if you were to like, follow, or subscribe on any of the platforms that you're watching or listening on. Thanks again.